You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine that spies on you every hour of every day. I know because I built it. I designed the machine to detect acts of terror, but it sees everything. Violent crimes involving ordinary people, people like you. Crimes the government considered irrelevant. They wouldn't act, so I decided I would. But I needed a partner. Someone with the skills to intervene. Hunted by the authorities. We work in secret. You'll never find us. But victim or perpetrator, if your number's up, we'll find you.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because how else would we stay relevant? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Broadchurch, New Girl, Game of Thrones, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supernatural, The 100, Once Upon a Time, Stranger Things, Doctor Who, and the Arrowverse, including Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Glee, That 70s Show, Gallivant, 6 Feet Under, and Futurama. Plus, more episodes are in the works, including revisits for How to Get Away with Murder, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and our American Horror Story series covering Roanoke, a revisit to our Marvel Defenders series where we talk Iron Fist, final visits with our Grimm and Vampire Diaries panels to say goodbye to these long-running and ending series in 2-part episodes, plus we'll be launching a new panel covering 13 Reasons Why, as well as Sense8, new series examining Sherlock, and an anniversary retrospective about the Buffyverse covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and because we still look back at shows now past, we'll be looking back at Third Rock from the Sun. What's more, CPU from time to time goes live. We've appeared at Comedy Outlet Mondays at Dog Story Theater and at Grand Rapids Comic-Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan while streaming live on Facebook. More live appearances are being planned, so make sure you like us at our Facebook page, our Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, and or our Pinterest at CPU Podcast, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we're always seeking new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, as long as it's relevant feedback. Hey, we're not machines over here. Today's panel is looking back at an American science fiction crime drama television series that aired on CBS from 2011 to 2016 for 5 seasons and a total of 103 episodes. The series was created by Jonathan Nolan and executive produced by Nolan, J.J. Abrams, Brian Burke, Greg Plegman, Denise Thay, and Chris Fisher. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully like a super intelligent machine, or don't age quite as well, such as The Defunct Samaritan. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes, wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for some time. And today, that show is Person of Interest. Person of Interest centers on a mysterious, reclusive billionaire computer programmer named Harold Finch, played by Michael Emerson, who develops a computer system for the U.S. government capable of collating all sources of information to predict and identify in advance people planning terrorist acts. He finds that the machine also identifies other perpetrators and victims of deadly intention, but being considered irrelevant, this information is deleted each night. Harold comes to realize that the machine has progressively developed into a super-intelligent artificial intelligence, leaving Harold to wrestle with questions of human control and other related moral and ethical issues. Harold creates a back door into the machine, which allows him to act covertly on the non-terrorism information. He recruits John Reese, played by Jim Caviezel, a presumed dead former CIA agent, and later others, to investigate and act on the information the machine provides. Reese, a former Green Beret Delta Force operator and CIA operative, is burnt out and living as a vagrant in New York City. He is approached by Finch, who informs him that he built a computer system for the U.S. government after September 11, 2001, which monitors all electronic communications and surveillance video feeds in order to predict future terrorist activities. The computer, known as the machine, also predicts other lethal crimes, but because they're deemed irrelevant to national security, they are deleted daily. After the death of his partner, Finch decides to act covertly on the non-terrorism predictions and hires Reese to conduct surveillance and intervene in these cases. To prevent abuse of its capabilities, Finch programs the machine to only provide an identity of a person predicted to be involved in an imminent lethal crime in the form of a social security number, but no details of the crime or whether the POI, or person of interest, is a perpetrator or victim. Finch and Reese, and later others, then attempt to understand the case and to stop the crime from occurring. They're helped by NYPD detectives Lionel Fusco, played by Kevin Chapman, a formerly corrupt officer whom Reese coerces into helping them, and Joss Carter, played by Taraji P. Henson, who initially investigates Reese for his vigilante activities. The series features several subplots. One significant story arc involves HR, an organization of corrupt NYPD officers who are initially in league with budding mob boss Carl Elias, played by Enrico Colantoni, and later with the Russian Mafia. Another important storyline revolves around Root, played by Amy Acker, a psychopathic hacker who is determined to gain access to the machine. The series received a highly positive reception from some critics, including an increase in acclaim when the series introduced more serialized storylines and deepened its exploration of the varied implications of superintelligent artificial intelligence in later seasons. A 2016 critique of the series stated that by the end of its first season, Person of Interest had transformed from a crime-fighting show with a plot twist to one of the best science fiction series ever broadcast, a change said to be due to the series putting the machine, its intelligence, and the ethics of using it at the center of an ideological battle and an unintended consequence of giving the machine a voice compared to its initial presence as a simple background plot device. Each episode includes an opening voiceover variant, such as this Season 1 version. You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine that spies on you every hour of every day. I know because I built it. I designed the machine to detect acts of terror, but it sees everything. Violent crimes involving ordinary people, people like you. Crimes the government considered irrelevant. They wouldn't act, so I decided I would. But I needed a partner, someone with the skills to intervene. Hunted by the authorities, we work in secret. You'll never find us, but victim or perpetrator, if your number's up, we'll find you. Today, for CPU's Look Back at Person of Interest, two familiar voices have gathered together to form a small but super intelligent threesome to chat about POI and sift through the relevance of its various numbers and machines. It should be noted, though, that all of our panelists have viewed the entire series and may discuss sensitive plot points, so for those of you who haven't watched Person of Interest, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I'd like the panel to introduce themselves. They should know this drill, and those who listen to CPU should know this drill, but I'm going to ask them the following questions. First, I'd like you to identify yourselves by your first names only. Tell us how you came to watch Person of Interest, what made you start watching, how'd you find out about it, what kept you watching. Because this is a Looking Back series podcast, I need to ask you if you've watched all the seasons. And then I need you to rate your interest in the show. This is the standard CPU character question, and because it's a Looking Back episode, you have to provide two answers. How did you feel at the beginning of the series, and how did you feel at the end of the series? Are you ready, panel?
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay, so with regard to Person of Interest, how would you rate your interest, both at the beginning and at the end? You predicted it would be high-quality television, even when so many thought it was irrelevant, like The Machine. You loved it so much you worshipped it. You felt the show was the pinnacle of human achievement and an evolution of consciousness, even godlike. Criminally underrated, and that's coming from a would-be criminal, like Samantha Root Groves. Though it took some getting used to, you found it excellent. In fact, watching the show gave you a purpose when you otherwise drifted in your TV-watching life, like John Reese. You didn't always understand it or what it was about, but you came to believe in it because it helped set you on the right TV watching road, or life, like Detective Lionel Fusco. You were wary of it and the moral lines around which it grappled, though you ultimately believed its larger purpose served a greater good as long as it followed a set of principles that aligned with yours, like Harold Finch. You didn't trust it at first and didn't love all of it, but there were parts of it you liked, or you watched it because your significant other and or your friends watched it, like Selene Shaw, or you couldn't finish it for whatever reason, maybe because you, spoiler, died, and went to go be on Empire, like Detective Joss Carter. Who would like to start?
I'm Selene.
Hi, Selene.
Hi.
Hi.
Initially, I would have rated myself as a Reese. You know, I had heard about it, and I was like, everyone on Tumblr's talking about this. Maybe I should finally start watching it. And it was just one of those shows I would put on and then, like, knit or do a puzzle, because I didn't have to completely pay attention. And I got halfway through the season, and I was like, wait, what am I watching? This is a lot more intense than I thought, and I started rewatching that season. And I would have to say now I'm more of the root character. I think everything of this show.
Okay. Wonderful. Welcome, Selene. Welcome back. If you listen to CPU, you will have heard her voice last on our The 100 panel.
I'm Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
How are you?
I'm great.
I started watching it right from the very beginning, based on the first trailer I saw for it. I'm like, this one looks interesting. And back at that time, I was watching a lot of TV. I mean, I'm talking 4 to 6 hours a night, pretty much all the time, and then whatever I can find on the weekends. Then I got a life, so I don't watch as much now. Anyway, I would say at the beginning I was very much like Reese. Pretty much what Selene had said there. By the end, I was a bit more Harold.
Okay.
Some suspicions, etc. It was just a very interesting show, and there hadn't been anything else like it. And that development from the machine being kind of just a background trigger to give you that crime-solving thing to actually being more of a moral question was very, very clever, and that kept me engaged right the way through. At least through season 4 I was very engaged. Once I heard it was being cancelled and they were doing a shortened season 5, I kind of was, oh no, this is going to be hard. And it was a little harder at the end, but it was a very, very good show. And one I still think of fondly. You know, sometimes you watch a show and you forget about it after a while. Mm-hmm. This one, at least the early seasons, it's always going to hold. That was a special moment in TV in some regards.
Well, welcome back, Spencer.
Thank you.
And if you're familiar with CPU, you've heard Spencer in pretty much all of our superhero adaptation panels, except for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, because that one's crap.
I beg to differ a little
At least at
bit.
the start. Well, I watched the first 3 episodes of that and couldn't carry on, so.
Yes, that's true. He has mentioned that. Well, welcome back to both of you. And of course, I've mentioned that I'm Kylie, and I came to watch Person of Interest because if you know me, or you follow the blog, or you've listened to these episodes where I've given this speech, you know that I do watch a lot of TV, and I look to see what's coming out in the fall to spring season, usually on the major networks and some cable. And I read that Person of Interest was coming out, and there were basically 4 main draws for me. The first was Jim Caviezel, who, you know, I wasn't like one of those people that was so super passionate for Passion of the Christ.
Still haven't seen it.
Really?
Really?
I mean, it's very good. It is very good. And the reason why it's very good is not because Mel Gibson directed it, but because he does such an amazing job in the role. The second, and probably slightly larger reason, is Michael Emerson. I was a big Lost fan. He played Benjamin Linus on Lost, who was the morally ambiguous character from the moment he was introduced. He's a phenomenal actor. I've seen him in other things too, and I just knew that the combination of these two was going to be great. Plus, Taraji P. Henson at the time was in the main cast, and the only thing I'd seen her in at the time was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which was the movie where Brad Pitt
was in it.
Yep, Brad Pitt's in it, and he starts off as an old man and turns into a baby by the end. The movie itself is a little hokey, but she's great. So the cast caliber was there, but then the production side was there. J.J. Abrams, I'm pretty much in the cult of J.J. and will watch whatever he puts his stamp on, for better or for worse. And then Jonathan Nolan is the younger brother of Christopher Nolan, acclaimed movie director of such favorites as Inception and the Batman movies from Christian Bale's time and a bunch of other ones. So I just thought, well, with all of this, even though it's on CBS, because I don't always watch what's on CBS, with all these people involved, I knew it had to be good. Man, was it good!
Yes, it was.
From
One of only 2 shows I watched on CBS, and one I still do.
Right? I mean, from the very first episode, it was engaging, the whole conceit of it. And then where it evolved from that very first episode kind of blew my mind, because it started off as sort of that crime of the week situation, and then turned into this, as Spencer noted, as I noted in the introduction, this more morally complicated weekly discussion about should we be doing this or should we not be doing this, and do we preserve the machine, and is the machine sentient, alive? You know, there's all these kinds of questions, and it's a very relevant discussion, particularly nowadays as our technology grows and as people start to experiment with stuff like this. So,
well, it's something so relevant in our day and time as well. The idea of monitoring all kinds of communication and being able to pull things relevant and say, well, look, this person is planning to do something nefarious, and it looks like it's going to happen to this person. Yeah, it's just so relevant right now.
it is.
Well, that and all that information coming out, that the CIA can, backhack into your smart TVs and all that. I literally laughed when that came out.
Microwave, right?
Microwaves and everything. And I just laughed, and I was like, guys, this is what person of interest has been saying forever.
6 years.
And you're just now, what?
Sci-fi does that a lot, though. I mean, you look right back through to the 60s when Star Trek was talking about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that was in Star Trek that is just what we're used to having now, technology-wise. Some of those suggestions are what, a kid gets an idea from watching a sci-fi show and develops something like that.
Yeah, there's sort of a which is the chicken, which is the egg kind of conceit to it. So because of that, and because it was so smart and so well written and so well performed, there was no reason for me to not keep watching, and I did watch all 5 seasons. So when I started the show, I probably would have been John Reese as well. It was excellent. It took some getting used to, because I was like, what is this? But then as I kept watching, it was like, wow, I'm totally going to watch everything they do. By the end of the show, it's hard for me to pick Root.
Couldn't do it.
She's a little bit psycho.
That's what I love about it.
A little bit. But I really do love it so much. At the back end of the show, I'm like, wow, that was really great television and was criminally underrated. And because of that sentiment, I feel like I'm going to have to pick. I'm not a would-be criminal, and I'm not a psychopath. And I have no hacking skills that I know of.
That's called deflection.
It's called the fact, Spencer. But I do have to pick that alignment, because it really is good. And if you haven't watched it, I think you're going to find by the end of this podcast episode, we're all going to say you should watch it.
I actually had a friend on Facebook looking for recommendations of things to watch yesterday, and everyone was suggesting The Crown. Great suggestion. But now, after thinking more through this, I'm going to go back on there after we're done podcasting and say, no, you really should watch Persons of Interest if you haven't, because, yeah.
Exactly. Because it's a looking back, it's not a deep dive per se. We will deep dive on the last 2 seasons just because so much stuff happened. Those 2 are very jam-packed, and probably the crux of the story happened there.
Can we say last 1.5 seasons? Because the last season was only a half season, and it just bugs me that they did that.
Okay. Whatever works for you, Spencer.
I'm trouble.
Yes, he instigates quite a bit. But for now, in looking back at all 5 seasons generally, talk about what you loved and what you hated. And you could get as general or specific as you want.
Right out the gate, I loved the casting.
Yes.
And the chemistry between Finch and Reese was so good.
Very good.
And the physical acting for the Harold Finch character, the ability to move the way he did for someone who doesn't have that was very, very intense to me as someone who does some acting, to see somebody be able, and to keep it through 5 seasons. That was impressive. But the chemistry between the 2 characters right from the get-go, starting with the distrust and the I don't know about this, and just the way it built all the way through to the final sacrifice was just great.
It wounded me. I just rewatched that last episode this morning, and I'm still emotional.
Celine's gonna have feelings.
So many feelings. But yeah, no, I 100% agree that the cast is phenomenal, and the arcs that they all take, like starting from, you're right, like you start watching the show and you're like, I don't know what to make of Finch. Like you really are just a reclusive billionaire who's, you say you're doing good, but how do we trust you? And then you get, I mean, even once you start to trust him, every once in a while he'll do something or say something. You're like, what? I mean, I trust you, but I love them all. They're my babies.
And the other good thing with the series is when they did introduce somebody new, it made sense. It wasn't just for, oh yeah, we've got this actress or actor or dog. We want to, we want to, get into a TV show. Let's jam it in. No, it didn't happen with this show. Every introduction made sense. The character that they brought in was strong and fit in one way or another. And you'd said about Root being the psychopath. I think she started out extremely psychotic and softened really well towards the end. She kind of socialized.
She did. Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with coming into contact with this little ragtag team, because, as she kind of progresses through the series, she even says to Finch, it's because of you that I have sort of grounded myself. And then she also, of course, gets involved with Shaw, who in many ways is intensely rule-bound in what she thinks and how she works through life, and so they kind of play off each other. And so there's a lot of, but you're right, there's a lot of great evolution for all of the characters, and they're all so well done that, I mean, even there's, in many ways you could write off Fusco pretty quickly, because he's kind of your standard brute cop, traditionally New York. You think he's going to be two-dimensional, and in the end, he's got way more than two dimensions.
Oh, God, you grew to love his character
so much.
Because at the beginning, he was the guy who'd been starting to make the bad decisions, was getting ready to be heavily in HR, and the way in which they took the story with his son and turned it to give him a purpose again, and you could end up in that trunk going into the swamp, or you could do something useful with your life. It just worked so beautifully, and the development and the interactions that he started having with everybody, whereas, yes, you said coerced, it was more blackmailed.
Yes.
Initially.
I was
coercement was definitely a softening. But by the end, he didn't need to be.
No.
And you really felt something for him, When you thought he might die, it was like, oh no, not Fosco too.
Right.
And the fact that he's, I think, one of the characters that really humanized everybody else the most, because he's the one who pulls Reese and says, you can have a life, try and interact with other people outside of working all the time. And he
was flawed, but he had that redemption.
Yeah.
And that story, that we can all kind of relate to that. We were all flawed, and at some point in time, most of us anyway, get some kind of redemption in life. So
he also had the great nicknames for everybody.
Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs for Ruth, and glasses for Harold.
Yeah.
I forget what he called Shaw.
I was just trying to think the same thing.
He had a couple for her, but I can't remember.
Yeah, he called her quite a few different things.
He did.
I seem to remember that. But even those two, the Shaw-Fosco relationship turned out to be really nice.
They just worked really well together as an ensemble. And then you add the writing. I have to say that this is it's a very dense plot in a way when you take a step back and you look at it overall, but it doesn't feel like that as you're going through it. It's intense, but you don't feel like, I don't think you register what it is you're really getting into until you get further along, and you're like, whoa, what is this?
It's a thinking person show.
Yes, it is. It's not turn your brain off television.
Right,
No.
and it's the show that's in its time slot now, I think, is MacGyver, and that is a turn your brain off and just probably actually poke your eyes out as well.
Oh,
TV.
wow. Well, I didn't pick it up for CPU's annual pickup pass list because I just couldn't see anybody besides Richard Dean Anderson as MacGyver. Sorry, guy, whoever you are playing it.
A pretty boy with fluffy hair. It's terrible. I watched the first episode out of that nostalgic, MacGyver, and I was like, no, this isn't MacGyver.
And so also CBS renewed it, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
What else did you like, or was there anything that you hated or didn't like about Person of Interest?
I didn't like the way the network handled it at times.
Agreed.
And that's part of why I think it only lasted the 4.5 seasons, even though they do credit season 5 as a full season. It was a shortened season. Mm-hmm. Networks have a very bad habit of taking good shows and moving them around, trying to find a spot where it's going to get an extra 50 viewers, and instead of achieving that, they end up losing market share, and then they move it again because, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult for people to watch a show that they expect on a Thursday night when it's not on a Thursday night, and they don't look for it anymore, then you don't have the viewers, and you kill it. And that's what CBS did to a great extent with Person of Interest, because it was very intelligent, very well acted. It had something for everybody, I guess. Mm-hmm. You've got that procedural element, you've got that action element, but you've got something that can make you think and question things. I just really liked that, and I hated the way that the network moved it around so much that really I feel is what killed it.
To be fair, and maybe partially because you raise all the different elements to it, it's procedural, it's science fiction, it's action, it was never a super ratings getter, because it was, I think a lot of people didn't know what to make of it. And I think a lot of the people who jumped on board to watch it, watched it because either the producer pedigree or the actor pedigree. You knew somebody from somewhere, and so, I'm going to watch this. I don't think it, by its nature, picked up a lot of new viewers as it went anyway. So to that end, yes, but on the other hand, CBS is weird about stuff anyway. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they are, in a great sense, a network that aims at an older audience.
Mm-hmm. Unless it's the Big Bang Theory.
Unless it's the Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
But they are also a network that, once they have a successful show, they do stick with it for a very long time, which is more than you can say for NBC. So there is that element as well. But if you're going to stick with it and let it be in its slot. Don't keep moving it around.
I agree with that. And it was hard to keep track of. And also, they didn't make Person of Interest available to like Hulu or anything.
No.
So if people wanted to catch up on it and do so in a legal manner, they really couldn't.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem as well with this particular show. Yes, you did have your weekly storylines, but if you missed a couple of episodes, you have a big hole in the overarching story.
Exactly.
Which this show really did have a clever overarching story. Where, a lot of other shows, you watch Blue Bloods, which is my other favourite show on CBS. It doesn't matter if you miss a couple of episodes, you're getting a good individual crime procedural show. Mm-hmm. There is an overarching thread, but it's not important like Person of Interest was.
Right. The setup of Person of Interest is in many ways similar to the X-Files, where you kind of had your crime of the week, or in this case your number of the week, where they were trying to solve it, and there might have been some high-level mention, but ultimately the main focus of many of the episodes was the number of the week. But then there would be like a beginning of the season, a mid-season, and end-season couple of episodes that addressed specifically the overarching conspiracy, whatever that was. Right. In the earlier seasons, it was the HR piece, and the mid to later seasons, it was the machine, and then the rise of the competing machine, Samaritan. Mm-hmm. For people who like the X-Files, this would be a comfortable sell, I think. Mm-hmm. And it also deals with government conspiracy, so you've got that piece too.
Yeah. One of the nice things about the stories of the week and the number of the week was it wasn't always the same thing. It wasn't they had to save the number. Sometimes the number was the bad guy.
Right.
And I liked that, that you didn't know, you had to wait and see which way the number was going to fall, and that was a nice element as well.
It was. Were there any seasons or storylines that were your favorite or least favorite?
I really enjoyed the stuff with Elias.
Yes, Elias is. I love the rise of Elias and how initially he's, as we've talked about, one of those numbers that we think they're saving, and it turns out he's actually the bad guy. And the moral compass is the question that Harold and Reese bring up is over how many numbers are we either gonna come up now because we saved this number? Like,
Right.
And the information isn't always good, and is that, like, where do we lie in this entire system if the people we are saving end up being the perpetrators later and cause a lot more deaths? And that entire moral line and how that progresses with Elias as he goes from being the big bad guy to, well, I mean, yeah, you're still a kingpin, but you're not the new kingpin that's coming in.
Yeah, you're the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
That was another good storyline with Elias, is when they brought in the other guy, who I can't remember the character name either.
I can't either.
But when they brought him in and he was trying to eradicate Elias's empire and take over, that was a good storyline too. And they did that consistently throughout this show. When they did bring in new arcs and twists, they were very well done.
One of my favorite resulting questions from the Elias question that you just talked about, Selene, saving him and then what kind of effect that has, was how they set Elias up against Harold to be two sides of a very thin coin, a very thin line, that they're basically the same person, but for a handful of choices. There's so many gray moral questions that this show tackles, whether it's because of the intelligence, the actual technological factor, or whether it's because of the human factor. And I think that is kind of a brilliant way to, you don't even really have to necessarily think about it if you don't want to, but the fact that the questions are posed kind of challenges you to pick a side as you're watching it. And what would you do? And is it really an easy answer? And I like television like that kind of gives you those layers to work with, and then you can choose to be deep about it or not.
A moment that really sticks out to me is in the very last episode when Harold is on his way to that rooftop and the Samaritan takes over Times Square and is like, are you really, like, is this decision up to you? And he's like, no, it's not, but I'm going to make it anyway. Like, and just how he refused to make those decisions for so long, and how his inability to act created so many issues, and then his acceptance of, I'm going to make this decision for good or for bad, and I'm going to own it, was just...
It was Dominic, by the way.
Dominic,
oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you were doing.
Yes, I was looking up bad guys. And that's, there were so many good villains throughout this. Whether they were big villains, or they were like the cop at the beginning of the HR story, the one who was like a sergeant.
Yeah.
They were just very well written villains. They were not morally ambiguous all the time. There were differences in every one of them. They weren't just nasty, violent people. They often had a purpose as to why they were the way they were.
No better example of that than the Greer character.
Oh, Greer was fantastic. It's the first time I've watched a Brit character that I've wanted to kill.
That's some kind of internalized struggles, but...
Usually I just associate with them, but this guy, I tell you.
But he didn't see what he was doing as bad.
No.
There was no downside. He was so forward moving in his purpose, which was, regardless of the collateral damage, Samaritan is making our world a better place. And the proof was in crime is down, hunger is down, all these things. But in the meantime, there are people dying to make this happen.
Yeah, we'll kill off an entire city if it means that it's better for the whole world. It's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. And
so there's torture. The torture they put her through.
Oh yeah, but sure, that was
my baby.
Let's talk about the team a little bit. I mean, we mentioned Fusco and we mentioned Harold, but they did get Shaw, and they got the dog.
I love the dog. Bear was fantastic. What a great introduction.
Yeah.
And there was some comedic element to that, which was nice. It's good to get a little comedic relief in the show from time to time. And the first season with the dog, definitely there were little comedic elements.
And we should probably talk about Carter.
Carter was great. I love the way that they took someone that was investigating him, trying to catch him, and brought it around to, hey, what he's doing is the right thing. It's what I want to do, but I'm limited by the job.
And the corruption on the job.
Yeah. And then Simmons killed her. Bastard Simmons.
That was such a hard episode.
That was
a very difficult episode. Because she was She was a very, very strong character in the show.
Yes. Phenomenal actress.
She was the conscience of them in a lot of ways in the early days.
She was. How do you feel about the fact that they kind of set her and Reese up romantically prior to her death?
Yeah, it felt a little forced, actually.
Yeah.
They were trying to humanize John a little bit, which they did more successfully later on. But it just felt forced. It did not seem like a natural progression for them.
No. That's what I remember thinking. Like, normally I'd be all for it if the show had led me there prior to the point, but I didn't feel like the show really led us there until the actual episode in which she loses her life. And then you're like, well, what? Where did that come from? Yeah. I mean, they had a high affection for each other, but how did affection
It was more of a trade craft respect than a
romantic
relationship. It just didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Well, that's the season I've seen the least, actually.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember so much. I remember that they set that up, but I don't actually remember that much. I just remember crying a lot because she died.
Aww, Selene.
I'm a very emotional TV watcher. Very emotional.
There's nothing wrong with that. Well, now let me tease your emotions some more. And I imagine I might get some passion from this corner of the room. Root and Shaw.
Not gonna lie, that's the reason I start initially, I'd read all these things on Tumblr talking about the machine, and I remember reading all these things about the machine, and people, I hadn't seen the show yet, but here I am, because I'm a Tumblr junkie, just reading all of my friends' comments on these shows, and their intellect and their discussions on, they were really long, lengthy posts on the machine and the moral ambiguity and whether or not anything, and then I remember seeing the progression of Root and Shaw and how all of a sudden there was this, there was a possible lesbian interest, and being like, oh, okay, tell me more. And that's actually what really made me start watching the show. Yeah, no, and it's fun for me because I bought all of the the only one I don't have yet is season 5, but I immediately, once I got through season 2, was I'm buying this entire show. I bought it, and I've watched a lot of the extra features and all of the commentary and the stuff, and they were talking about how initially, the very first episode where they're together and it's the entire iron scene where she's like, we could bring this to play. She's like, oh, bring it on, come on, bring it on. I'll enjoy you burning me with this iron. And it was just that chemistry is off the wall. And, a lot of shows would be like, oh, no, that's not what this is. And the director and the writers being like, this chemistry is awesome. Let's delve into it and check it out and see how it goes. They didn't automatically just cut it out, and that to me is so, they handled that so beautifully. And
well, what you're hinting at without actually saying is that they never intended Root and Shaw to be a couple.
Right.
It was just the fact of that chemistry, and then they were like, what? So we have to make something out of this.
It didn't feel forced, which a lot of the time in TV it feels like those relationships are forced upon us. Mm-hmm. This one didn't. It really felt like a natural progression.
Mm-hmm. Very organic. And not necessarily not easy. It was never easy.
It wasn't done as a statement.
Right.
And that's what I appreciated about the way that they handled it. Mm-hmm. It was done as, this works very well. The chemistry was definitely there, and it progressed the story. It gave both of them a little something more in the storyline, a little something to anchor them.
And also to give them purpose, because before, Root was purely about the machine is a god and I'm going to worship it, and Shaw is completely about, I like to do violence, let's keep doing violence. So.
I'm going to go break this man's clavicle. Well, he's just getting a cup of coffee. Yeah, but I don't like the way he's standing.
Yeah, exactly.
She worshipped violence to a very high degree.
Very much so. And then it basically gave them something that was, again, a little bit more human than just being, I worship a machine and I like to kill people. So, which I think is nice. And I only mention those relationships just because they were really the only relationships on the show, other than peripherally the
Harold relationship that became from being an actual relationship into kind of this voyeuristic stalker thing that he had going on.
It was a little bit. So how do you feel about the fact, because remember, the whole thing about the Grace aspect, and by the way, Grace is played by his real life wife, Carrie Preston. Okay.
That is cute.
Yes. he removes himself from her life
To protect her.
To protect her because of everything that's happening with the machine.
But then he gets in such close proximity to her, and it's obvious he's watching her so often, he's not really doing what he set out to do. He's putting her in danger by doing that anyway. So for someone so smart, he was being really dumb.
Well, he did that a lot. He's not perfect.
No.
Spencer.
No, definitely wasn't
Greer
perfect.
even brings that up. You know, Greer at one point, it's like your downfall is you care.
Yeah.
Your humanity, your compassion.
Yeah.
I think Elias says something similar to him. So, and that's another very interesting aspect of the show.
Another relationship that was there was Finch's relationship with his former business partner. The very first moment you see that former business partner on screen, you know he's a bad guy.
Nathan.
That was it. You knew Nathan was the reason that some of the things went awry, because Harold's intent with the machine was one thing, and Nathan's like, oh yeah, that's all well and good, but let's monetize it and do this, and that all played out over the course of time as well.
It did.
And yet at the same time, he's also the reason that Finch is doing what he's doing. So even though he's kind of, I wouldn't say he's a bad guy, but he had the less good intentions.
Yeah,
morally ambiguous.
Yes, you see, but he knew what Harold wanted it to be, and he agreed with it to an extent, but he was that guy like, yeah, that's great, but we can't make money off it that way, so I've got to do this so that we can make the money, and then, okay, I'm going to convince you to keep doing what you want to do because it's the right thing. Yeah, it's kind of a devil's advocate character.
And then he's the one who was like, oh, but how can you just watch these irrelevant numbers get thrown away? Like, how can you live with this? And he was like, I just can't. And then he dies. And then Finch is like, no, I can't.
He dies, but he's never really gone, because Finch often thinks on their conversations, which is why I kind of hesitate to call Nathan a bad guy. Nathan made stupid decisions too.
But Nathan was causality.
He was causality. Exactly. He's not an Elias, where Elias is clearly making poor moral choices.
I think the subtext with Nathan's character is greed. And how greed leads to greater problems. You get maybe what you want, but what is the cost of what you want to everybody around you? And that was really the Nathan character, is what is the cost of what you wanted to everybody else? Without his decisions, some of these bigger arcing problems would never have been there.
It's true.
Going off of what you just said about how Nathan is dead, but he's never really gone, it made me think of the very last episode once again, where the machine brings up the fact that even though everyone dies alone, as long as you are remembered by one person, you're never actually gone. I wonder if they planned that.
Wouldn't surprise me as clever as the writing was.
I think a lot of things just sort of intersected and foreshadowed and everything else. And I love the fact, if you also think about it, if you look at your core group of heroes, not one of them is guilty of pure moral choice their entire life. They all make poor, questionable decisions at some point. Some more than others.
And some of them start off as almost purely poor decision makers and become redeemed, and others start off as, there's that twist of they were very, very morally compassed, and then by the end there's grey areas for them.
Shaw would be one of those, because I think you find out her backstory is very interesting, because you basically learn she's a sociopath. She has no concept of human emotion.
She's Dexter.
She's Dexter. And so she's lost and aimless, super intelligent, very skilled. The government gives her a purpose. When she loses that purpose, the only thing she remembers is that how much she enjoyed the killing and the violence and stuff. And it wasn't until she met the team where she redirected her aggression.
Oh, but was she good at it?
Oh, so good.
I guess that's all the dimensions that we're talking about, but we kind of are hedging toward it. So now I want to talk about the last couple of seasons in some detail, because this is where the story culminated. And so if you watch Person of Interest, spoiler, 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 there's the machine, which we've been talking about. That's the thing that Harold creates. And then there's a competing interest that basically was seeded by Nathan a long, 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 long time ago.
Well, it's what happens when the government takes a good idea and
perverts it.
That's Samaritan.
That's Samaritan. And it starts off with a whole bunch of code names, Northern Lights, there's some other, I forget what it's called, but what we eventually come to know it as Samaritan, a shortened version of Good Samaritan. So Samaritan predicts the larger chaotic events that could disrupt human race, but completely ignores the irrelevant numbers. Anybody who is...
And even manipulates to an end goal.
Exactly. Let's talk about some of that, because that was like the major... It guided all of the number stories, and it guided all of the overarching story of seasons 4 and 5. What did you think about that story, where the story ended up, and how the characters related to it? Were they good last seasons, these last 2, 4, and 5? Or season and a half?
1 through 3 were much better for me. Samaritan, I get the storyline. I understand that, this is what happens when the government takes your good thing and turns it into a tool. So I understood that. Did I really like it? I'm a little ambivalent on it in comparison to the rest of the show. And it certainly felt a little rushed towards the end.
Well, yeah.
Well, it was.
Because they cut it.
They had to. To give us a proper finale, they had to rush it, which is a shame. There were aspects of the Samaritan story I really liked. The fact that they were always able to find people to work for Samaritan, knowing what they were doing, but they were convinced that it was for the right reasons, which is quite often the problem with humans.
I just feel like the last 2 seasons were a lot more goal-oriented than the first few. I don't know how I feel. I have a lot of emotions. I think the last 2 seasons were a lot more emotional, and there was a lot more in them. There was a lot more to think about. It blew my mind a lot more than the first few seasons. Like, the first 3 seasons were good television, and I think the last 2 were great, in my opinion, because I love being able to just enjoy what I'm watching, and having a few good thoughts, arise from it is exciting. But when television actually makes me think and gives me something to talk about, I absolutely love it. And I think that's what Samaritan did, because not only do we now have the question of the machine, and is the machine a good thing? Should we open it? Is it better that it's a closed system than an open system? And should a AI be able to affect the world, not just see it and let us know, but be able to actually make the decisions and control them and basically affect the future of the human race? That just was exciting, and I loved it. And seeing them compete, and how there's so much, it's so compact, and there's so much to it. And
it did give us some great characters. The Cameron Manheim role was brilliant and very well played. The things that her and Root did to each other by the end were just wow. And the senator, who was always
Carmine Falcone from Gotham.
Yeah, plays it well.
Yeah.
So we got some good villains out of it, although they probably wouldn't consider themselves villains, even though what they're doing is morally wrong. The end goal, again, it's that whole
greater good argument.
Greater good, yeah.
I agree with Selene's take. I actually like seasons 4 and 5, and I think that they elevated the show. I was along for the ride for seasons 1 through 3, but actually kind of the coincidence of this is I normally don't go for the procedural TV. I don't like the case of the week kind of format, unless it has a larger implication. Person of Interest had the larger story, but the HR storyline didn't engage me as much. It gave some complications to the characters, and it allowed us to sort of explore Reese and Carter and Fusco and how they sort of triangulated with each other, and then Finch got thrown in the mix when they realized he was there. But it wasn't until the machine became a character and then had a competing character in Samaritan that elevated the show for me from something that was really good and perhaps where it should have been ratings-wise to something that was hugely underrated, because it was so smart and it took on those questions.
But it felt to me like once they introduced Samaritan, it was like they were saying, okay, we're building this to the head where it's going to end. It felt like the beginning of the end. Now, talking of Samaritan, how about when Samaritan has that kid speaking for it?
Oh,
creepy was that?
Creepy but effective. I
Very.
thought, wow. Good choice. And
Very non-threatening, yet really scary.
Exactly. There was a little bit of a Terminator aspect to the story by then. I kept thinking about, we're going to see Arnold Schwarzenegger, Skynet, yeah. I started thinking, oh no, the world's going to get... That's part of it, though. That's why it was so good. There was a lot more tension and scariness and thrill to it.
There was, it just felt terminal.
Oh.
I think that's what bothers me about it, is I knew that it was building to the end. And it was a show to me that it could still be going.
It could.
Well, I mean, they could have definitely elongated out the entire Samaritan thing. Like, I feel you're right. I feel like after you have a second AI come in, there really isn't much further to go after the AIs compete and whoever comes out wins. But I feel like had season 5 not been declared a half season and a shorter one, I feel like they could have carried that one on for many seasons and kind of looked into the, I guess, once we had to rebuild the machine, because in the end of season 4, they effectively...
Quick, so I'll go to Best Buy and buy a bunch of PlayStations 4.
So if you missed that plot point when you're watching, they have to save the machine, because Samaritan effectively decimates it, and they're busy trying to save its code, and they do so by stealing a bunch of PlayStation 4s and loading the code on that. I don't know how I felt about that. That felt like product placement.
A little bit.
To a point, but it was also directly out of the news story from earlier on where they had said Saddam Hussein had bought up all the PlayStation 3s he could get his hands on to use the chips and guidance systems. So it was very much pulled from the news type.
Whoa. I didn't know that. I maybe should not watch the news as much. That's kind of scary, too.
The entire rebuilding the machine and getting the team back together and recommitting to fighting Samaritan, I feel like it could have taken, it could have been several more seasons had they wanted it to. Had they been able to. And
I think they could have dwelled on Samaritan hunting them longer. They could have really gone a lot longer with that and had them going off and doing like a survivalist kind of while still trying to help, but really trying to stay much more under the radar. They could have done a little more with that.
The sum total of this is that you feel like this show wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel that once Samaritan was introduced, they painted themselves into a finale corner. It's like, okay, well, this is the end. There's nothing going to be more difficult for them to deal with than this better machine coming after them all. So once that's taken care of, it's over.
See, here's what I think on this point. I think the Samaritan was the end game piece for them all along. But you already mentioned how the network kind of screwed the show over.
Yes, they do.
So I think they had to move up that timetable.
And that's probably it.
Yeah.
Because
I'm probably looking at it with the 2020 vision of looking back, because at the time I really did enjoy season 4. It probably didn't feel terminal at that point.
Right.
It just does now with hindsight.
Sure. I think if the ratings and the network and everybody had been more cooperative, we probably would have seen more seasons of it. Because I really got the sense in season 4 that there was sort of it was almost like a reboot from the first 3 seasons, because the first 3 seasons were HR. So I really had a sense when I was watching it that, oh, they're going for a long game here. This is what this was all about to begin with. And then they announced the 13 episodes was announced before they actually broadcast them, that we're only doing 13 episodes. We're doing it to give the show a chance to tie up. We know it's really popular, has a passionate fan base, and so they had to rush it.
Well, that was after they pushed back showing it, too. Like, how long of a gap was there between
It was
seasons?
quite a while.
Like, it was almost
a full year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they kept it in limbo, and then I think they just decided, like, well, I guess we can't just end it here.
I'm wondering whether part of that was economics, whether it was just an expensive show to produce.
I don't know. I can't see that being expensive. I don't. If it's expensive, it's because the network did it to themselves. Because I think the costs probably maintained throughout. There's always a lot of explosions. There's always a lot of sort of technological hocus pocus that you're watching. The ratings did kind of slide. And probably with each move that it made, because it was consistently on Tuesday for a while, and then they changed it. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
I also remember there being talks before they announced the 13th season episode of possibly moving it to Netflix. Like, I know Netflix was in talks with CBS to see if they could buy it.
Yeah,
so
and
that was
CBS
also
actually released the first 3 or 4 seasons right away in that sort of preliminary deal, because CBS shows don't appear on Netflix. They have their streaming app that they show old stuff for current shows.
Yeah, because I do know they were talking about it, and the Tumblr fandom was hugely excited
Oh,
for it
yeah.
to get bought, and then it didn't happen, and whatever fell through.
Yeah, Netflix has done a good job with certain shows like that. They did it with Hell on Wheels, they did it with Longmire, 2 very good shows that ended too early on the networks they were on, and Netflix bought up and did another 1 or 2 seasons. So that would have been a nice, give them a full final season at least, would have been a nice thing. But it didn't happen. So.
No,
Didn't happen.
didn't happen.
So let's talk about the series finale. Selene has hinted at a few things, but because we're looking back, we always have to hit on the button. What did you think about the series finale? Was it a proper send-off? And what did you think of them? And if you don't remember, first of all, the machine sacrifices itself with Finch's help, and this is after a long talk between the 2 of them, and does so by uploading a virus that basically spreads to Samaritan, except Samaritan has backup code in the Federal Reserve, so then Samaritan tries to get itself to a transmitter that will send it to a satellite, and Finch, the episode opens on Finch, who's determined to sacrifice himself, because it's going to result in the blow-up of this building, trying to get to it to prevent that from happening, except in the intervention, we find out that the machine and Reese, well, and it was showed earlier, you just forgot about it until that moment.
Yeah.
It was maybe 2 seasons or 3 seasons prior, the machine and Reese had a deal where...
A long-standing agreement.
A long-standing agreement that Finch would survive this whole ordeal, and the machine would protect Finch. And so Reese ends up assuming that sacrifice.
He made the ultimate sacrifice.
And in the penultimate episode, Root, who is actually trying to save Finch and herself from Samaritan agents, gets shot and also is a casualty, but becomes the voice of the machine, not ironically, because she was the voice of the machine for 2 seasons. She surgically altered herself so that the machine would broadcast straight to her.
That was also a result of Karen Manheim's character taking her hearing.
Yes.
So it was a way for her to, it was like a cochlear implant.
Yeah.
It was, with added benefit.
Yes.
And then, of course, Shaw and Fusco are kind of in the subway terminal holding out their last stand. So what did you think about all of that and how it all ended? Was it a good send-off?
It was adequate. I wasn't disappointed with it.
Okay.
I mean, what more could they do in a shortened season and tie it all up and leave you feeling like you had answers, you knew where each character had ended up. You know, the fact that it ends with, oh, the machine might actually be back and now Shaw's working with it. That didn't bother me at all. Now, you got to see Harold go off and be happy with the girl. Perhaps. I mean, you saw her smile and the recognition that he was there, and then it cuts away. I mean, the next thing could be her smacking him in the face really, really hard. You don't know.
There's no evidence that's happened.
No, exactly. There's no evidence that he went on to be happy ever after, just that he got to see her and connect with her. You know, Shaw and Fusco. There were lots of nice little wrap-it-ups, which I don't mind. Knowing that the show's going to end far better than, you know, something like The Sopranos, the way that ended, or the way that Dexter ended. So as far as ending a show and giving us a proper definitive ending, it worked.
But?
It felt forced.
Okay.
Which it was. So
you weren't okay with the forcedness.
I was not okay with the forcedness, but I was okay with the resolutions.
I slightly disagree. Like, I mean, I agree that it went faster than I felt it should have, but it didn't feel forced to me. It was very emotional. It was not handling
Forced
all
could be
those
the wrong
emotions.
word. It just felt
inorganic.
It didn't feel organic. It didn't feel like the rest of the show had. There was it was very sudden.
A sudden escalation, I guess, of as to what they went, into the final battle, I guess, yeah.
It's like, oh, we've done 12 episodes, they've only given us 13, oh crap, we've got to wrap everything up. That's how it felt.
I slightly disagree.
You can do that. That's what these are about.
I mean, I feel like it got forced when Shaw came back. Mm-hmm. Like, when Shaw was back and suddenly everything was in, we have to go. I mean, and I get that
defensive-wise, you can only be on defense for so long before you have to go on the offensive, because you can't survive strictly defensively.
I actually didn't enjoy when she was gone, kind of in the coma, in the machine, in with Samaritan. I didn't enjoy those episodes as much. But I think she left to have a baby.
Yeah, she was pregnant.
I think that's why that all happened. So I understand it. Life happens, but yeah.
I mean, I definitely missed her on the show.
She really did feel like a big missing piece. They handled it relatively well, but it just took away a little bit for a while.
Yeah, and the entire... The episodes where she was going through the simulations were extremely hard to watch for me. Just being like, no, don't.
But they were actually some of the better episodes of that season.
Yeah, I agreed. They were hard to watch, but very great episodes. And
the first one of them, especially, the first time she goes through the simulation and you don't realize that's what's happening. You're like, oh, she's been turned. She's working for Samaritan. Watch out.
Well, that in the time where she thinks it's a simulation and just kills the person and then finds out that it wasn't, was just like a
big mind.
Yeah,
word we can't say.
That's good. You didn't even write a sign for yourself.
I did today. But I thought the ending tied it up very well compared to a lot of other shows that have ended. And even with the shortened season, I thought it was still very neatly bound. They left us a nice little, it's not completely over, but it's not a definitive she's working for the machine either. She's just happy to have heard Root's voice, or maybe she actually is. I'm kind of sad that we don't see Harold come back, but I'm really glad he's not, but in the end...
Well, it was Harold's get out. Harold felt that he had to do what he was doing, and the end of it was that he actually got to go off and have life.
Yes.
And somebody else was there to take over the mantle. I did like.
I liked it, but at the same time, I'm like, but who's the techie now?
Oh, there's bound to be somebody. What they established in the last season is that some of the numbers they've saved, the machine has repurposed to be new machine operatives.
Which I really liked.
I actually like that too. And so now I'm going to add my opinion. I can see what you're saying, Spencer. But at the same time, I feel like they did the most brilliant they could have done with the factors they were dealing with.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
When I finished watching the series finale, I was also emotional. I had also cried profusely. I thought, oh my God, that was just the best show I've seen in a long time. It was so good. I think I got to rewatch it. Maybe they had showed some things that I didn't realize they were showing, and look at where they ended. And everybody, I mean, maybe it felt a little neat, but it wasn't. It was a very messy way to get to neatness, and I just thought the finale represented everything they'd been dealing with the whole time. Hard choices, morally stretched choices, things that basically humans had to deal with when juxtaposed against this awesome technology that they created. And it's an amazing finale to me. I actually was like, wow! That's when I posted on Facebook and I said, if people never watch this show, that's really sad for them.
And again, it's probably my 20/20 hindsight that's giving me some of these feelings. Because at the time, I don't seem to remember feeling quite the same. It's going back and looking at it and thinking how much better it could have been if they'd been given a full season to finish it.
Sure. And I get that too. And it is kind of a little bit sad and kind of the trend of the industry nowadays, that they just don't give shows the life they used to. And they would, if this had been introduced in an earlier years when there wasn't so much out there and so much to offer, I don't think they would have been quite so ruthless about how they did what they did. They might have given it 7 seasons and let it breathe and let The Samaritan have been the last 4 seasons. And it would have been a perfect kind of 2 shows within a show situation, but that's not what happened.
No.
And yet we have other shows that are still on.
Yeah, that is bothersome. There are shows out there that...
Grey's Anatomy.
Is that still on?
Yeah, and they renewed it.
And the 100. Oh, I'm so mad that they renewed it.
Oh, they renewed the 100, and the 100 is very divisive among the people that purport to watch it.
Yeah, there's some shows you just wonder how they get renewed. But once you get past 5 seasons, there's so much money in syndication that it's a financial decision, not a artistic decision.
It is, and to be fair, the magic number is 100 episodes, and Person of Interest reached 103. So it should, if ever somebody wants to syndicate it, maybe they should do that. I just want to say that for the record. Okay?
I mean, they can also go off the Washington, D.C. group now. Just saying.
The what?
The D.C. group, the other group of people.
The terrorist group.
No. They can do the repurposed numbers that are in D.C.
Oh.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
A spin-off. That's what you're talking about.
I understood you.
I was like, what?
Maybe Shaw can go join them.
So these are the next couple of questions to wrap up are what we feature in all of our looking back episodes. They're just wrap-up questions. Jonathan Nolan, the creator, the main creator, and as I've already mentioned, he's the younger brother of Christopher Nolan. He's the nephew of the guy who played Greer, John Nolan, and he's my birthday twin. He created...
Random fact.
Random facts. He created and produced this show, and it was his very first TV show creation. What do you think of his first time out, and would you watch other shows he creates? And in fact, the second show he's created is Westworld, which is currently on HBO. Do you watch that, or will you? Why or why not?
For a first going out, well done, sir. You've kind of set your bar very high. If I had HBO, I might watch Westworld. I don't. Yes, there's ways I can watch it, but I've heard good things, I've heard bad things. Yeah, maybe at some point in time. I'll keep watching whatever comes out and see if he can catch a lightning in a bottle twice, I'll be up for it.
If I had HBO, I would watch it because I think he did a fantastic job with Person of Interest. I've actually heard nothing about Westwood. What is it?
Westworld. It's another science fiction meets Western kind of conceit. I do have HBO and I haven't watched it yet.
No,
it takes over the time slot that Game of Thrones fills.
Now, wasn't there a movie a long time ago with Yul Brynner called Westworld that has these cybernetic characters, or am I just making things up in my brain?
This sounds vaguely like the conceit of the show, so maybe it is based on said movie, but I've never heard of the movie.
Well, there you go.
Are you going to IMDb?
I might have to.
Spencer's our resident Google/IMDb source.
IMDb was my very first app on my phone. So.
Yeah. It's very helpful for those of us here at the CPU. As for me, I like the Nolan family. Everything they do, I pretty much will watch. I love Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, created this show. He directed a lot of the episodes. He wrote a lot of the episodes. I would gladly follow him to whatever he produces or creates. And Westworld I will watch. I just haven't watched it yet. It's been on my pickup list for a while, but as you know, when you run a TV podcast, you got a lot of TV watching obligations. Just gonna say it.
1973 movie Westworld, starring Yul Brynner. Westworld is a futuristic theme park where paying guests can pretend to be gunslingers in an artificial Wild West populated by androids.
That's it!
If it seems familiar, then maybe that's where the concept came from. I don't know. I haven't watched any of the shows, so I'm just going based on what I heard. But I heard there's cyborgs and things.
Hey, pretty much anything sci-fi would grab me anyway, but the fact that he's involved just made it go, oh, I think I gotta go look and see what this is about now.
But you don't know who the cyborgs are? I don't know. I've heard things about it from some of our common friends who have said it's really good and have had watch parties, but are we between seasons currently or something?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I haven't heard anything recently.
Yeah, because basically, if I recall this correctly, I don't remember if it was the 2 slots after or 1 slot after, but Game of Thrones, at least last year, not this year, had the April to June slot, and then I think Westworld followed either in the summer or in the fall, at the Sundays at 9.
Okay. It's probably worth watching if it's the same writers that did this. I would be interested.
Would you recommend Person of Interest to others? Why or why not?
Yes, because it's brilliant. But no, because they obviously didn't watch it the first time when it was brilliant. They're the people whose fault it is for not watching it when it was on originally.
So you're going to spite them?
Yes.
You're not going to spread the love?
Spiteful. There's certain people I recommend it to that I don't hold blame.
That was very complicated, Spencer.
Yes.
As someone who didn't start watching until season 4, yes, I will recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, it's well worth watching. Like I said at the beginning, there's a friend who'd asked for recommendations on Netflix. This is going to be one that I send here in a few minutes.
I would totally recommend it, and I will recommend. It's as Spencer said it. It's got something for everyone. It's very smart. Don't expect to be watching Dancing with the Stars. If you are a Dancing with the Stars person, this is not the show for you.
What are you listening to a podcast about this for if you watch Dancing? Shut up and go put your head in the oven.
And now he's hostile. It's fine. The point of it is, it's a thinking person's television show. And I'm definitely of the audience that wants to be able to think when I'm watching TV. It can't just be turn off your mind most of the time. So if you enjoy that kind of TV, if you're a sci-fi fan also, please watch this show. I think you'll be moderately impressed. It is going to feel a little Terminator-esque for those who like Terminator, but it is not exactly the same, and that's important. I think Selene said she's purchased and watched it multiple times.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. I mean, I might purchase it later. I don't know. I think I would want to rewatch it. It is on Netflix, so for those who want to catch it.
It is one of those shows that I think you could come back to after a couple of years and really enjoy a whole time again.
I think so.
Especially with how strong the cast was, the chemistry with the cast. Jim Caviezel was absolutely fantastic in this show.
Mm-hmm. Really, there was no weak link. I can't think of any of the cast members that I would be like, he was great, but Michael Emerson, I have a special affection for him. He's just so good in everything he does.
Well, it's their interaction between the two of them that spawns the show, keeps it going from beginning to end. Their interaction is really the driving force behind it. You know, Finch saying, I want you to do this for me, and then when he's doing it for him, like, well, not like that! There's just that beautiful, well, yes, I realise you don't want me to do it like that, but it has to be the way it's done. So,
and Reese's one-liners are awesome. Because he's a quiet-spoken gentleman. He doesn't say a lot. But he gets a lot of lines and makes a lot of impact with these, like, simple statements.
It's well-delivered Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners.
Kind of, without the,
without the cheesy
stuff.
Typically after someone's unconscious.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like in Commando where he throws the knife in the guy's chest, he sticks him to the way, stick around. It's that kind of line without the cheesy.
And even the other, they're the two main characters, but even the supporting cast, they're also different. I keep reflecting on Root because if you watch the Buffyverse, you know who Amy Acker is, and she's got kind of a devoted following, as I indicate to Selene.
What is this Buffy you speak of?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Oh my god! She was on Angel, to be fair, the spinoff, but she's got kind of a devoted Whedon following. If you are in the cult of Whedon,
also in Dollhouse.
Dollhouse was good. That's another underrated show.
Or she was
Whiskey.
Okay.
Something.
Yeah, she was the doctor in the Dollhouse. I really enjoyed. For
all the roles that Amy Acker has played, and she's played quite a lot of dimensions between Joss Whedon's shows and shows she's been on otherwise. And this show, this is so different in many ways. And she's a chameleon. I just was like suspension of disbelief. I'm like, oh my god, I'm watching Fred. She's so psychotic. She's not Illyria, but she's so psychotic. Everybody does a great job. I know.
That was almost one of my favourite lines of hers, was because it's so condescending but perfect.
Perfect. Or come on, Harry. She's the only one who calls him Harry. Yep. Which is fun. And then
she really grew as a character too.
Yeah.
I mean, the development for that character was really spot on.
It was. It was for all of them, really. They're all so good.
There were no throwaway characters in there.
Not one character. Even Carter, who, you're right, she was such a cornerstone for a while, and then, probably because she got this better gig over on Fox, she jumped, but it was so huge, her role in it, that you could feel her absence for quite a while.
Yeah, you could. And I think part of that was by design. They knew that she was going to be leaving, so they gave her a send-off that wasn't just, okay, now she's gone. It actually had an impact on the other characters in the show, which, again, comes down to how good the writing was in this.
So what we're saying is, as I hinted at the beginning of this podcast episode, watch it!
Yes.
Please watch it. Is there anything else that we haven't covered, said, or otherwise alluded to that you'd like to discuss while looking back at Person of Interest?
We didn't mention Elias's right-hand man and how he gave a sacrifice for Elias.
Marco?
Yeah.
Is that the one played by James Gross?
I believe so. That he had that kind of the scar on the face, and he was quite often appeared as a police officer, but he wasn't.
Oh.
He was Elias's bodyguard, essentially.
Oh, from the earlier seasons?
Yeah. And when he was captured and was up in the penthouse and was finally giving up the information, or so they thought, and it was really, okay, once you open that safe, we're all dead, and I know I'm going to be dead. Just little elements like that, the way the teams were all very cohesive and very giving to each other.
The whole safe blow-up thing was season 4. I thought it was 4.
I don't know.
At any point, again, it just comes down to the point of the relationships that they wrote in this show were all very well-written relationships.
They were. What was interesting about Elias, while you're mentioning this, is that all of his lieutenants were very, very close to him on a personal level.
Yeah.
And the show actually gave them room to breathe.
Yes.
And had them interact with our core characters in a way that made you question, are they really such bad guys?
Right.
Yeah, especially in season 5 when Bruce shows up. And
that's the one played by James Gross.
And then you find out that Elias isn't actually dead like you thought for half of us. I literally gasped out loud.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Oh, it was such a moment.
And they made their villains very clever. They weren't just thugs.
No.
And I really enjoyed that aspect of the show of giving intelligence to all sides. Very, the thugs were very easily dispatched when they were just thugs because the intelligent people were dealing with them.
Right.
But good times.
And the dimensions of all of how typically you always thought that the villain was something else before
it was revealed what they really were.
Even with Dominic, when you think he's just another thug who's trying to take over, and then you find out how masterful he is with everything he's been doing, and like that background episode for Greer when we find out how he was an MI6.
Yes,
that I thought was an amazing episode, and it really helped with that character. Like he already was so much, and then he just became that much more after that episode. What's really interesting for me is I'm rewatching it right now with Kelsey, so I'm starting back at season 1.
Who you may have heard on our other shows from like the 100 and the Vampire Diaries and New Girl. There's another one I not thinking of right now. Anyway, continue. You're watching it with Kelsey.
I'm watching season 1 with Kelsey while I'm simultaneously rewatching season 5. And
that's schizophrenia right there.
It's really cute watching them back when they're all so innocent and they're really not, but they are. Like every episode starts and I'm like, oh, this one's so good. Oh, this one's really good. It's like, I'm going to say this to every episode, but I love this episode. And it's just the progression through them all. And just like you said, like a lot of the characters aren't throwaway characters. Most of the episodes, I can't think of one episode that I watched where I was like, it could have done without this one.
I mean, there were several times where a number of the week came up and they had a well-rounded story around them, so much so that there were times where they came back to be useful. Like I said, they were never just throwaway, which was great.
And like Paige Turncoe coming back as Zoe.
Yes.
How she kept showing up. The episode where her, Root, and Shaw all had to infiltrate that party, and they all.
Now she's somebody that I wanted to get with Reese.
Yes, it made sense for them to get together,
and they never pulled the trigger on that one. Really, I mean, they kissed. I think once.
I wonder if the 100 had anything to do with that.
Probably.
And if they were maybe thinking about it, and then she got this other show. But that episode where they're all like, "Oh, what gun do you have?" Like they're all in these beautiful dresses, and all the girls are like, "Oh, let me see what piece you're bringing. That's really cool. Can we switch?"
Yeah, I love the way that they kind of flipped everybody on their head from time to time, and nobody was
solidly tied into anything.
Yeah, there was no like cookie cutter character at all. They all had dimension. They all were unique. They all were different in terms of not what you'd normally see on TV.
Right.
So, which is nice and refreshing. Watch it. Can't say it enough. The soundtrack?
So good. I mean, as a sound person, just the music and the soundtrack was so great. And I can't think of his name. It starts with an R. The guy who did the sound.
Okay.
He also did the sound. It's that movie with the giant aliens versus the giant robots.
Oh, Pacific Rim?
Pacific Rim. He did Pacific Rim. I can't think of his name.
Wow.
Thank you for understanding that. But he did, honestly, the very first time I watched an episode, I saw J.J. Abrams, Jonathan Nolan, and whatever.
Top Ramen? No.
I don't know. Whatever the sound dude's name was. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good. That's all I needed. And then Jim Caviezel. Also, the Jesus jokes you can make during this movie, just because he's in Passion of the Christ, is great.
Nailed it!
I'm going to use that one next time I watch it.
Oh, we're recording this on Easter weekend.
Oh no!
Too soon!
It's been 2
Oh, come on, stick it. There you go.
That's called irony, people. Also, let me level with me. Did you really understand all their techno jargon?
Some of it, quite a bit of it, actually.
Most of it, things that I didn't understand, I found out when I watched the movie or the episodes with commentary on. So,
And part of that was that they did it in a way that the context helped you to understand it without needing to know all those little techie things, which was really rather cool.
and every once in a while, when it was over your head, they would have them explain it to Fusco or be like, Reese be like, I'm an arms guy, not a techie.
That's
like,
true.
Layman's terms, man.
That's true. That's a very good point, Selene, because I was actually thinking about, the techno jargon is really accessible on this show. And I was thinking about that, like, why is that? And that's exactly it. It's basically Fusco. If they have to explain it to Fusco, everybody will get it. So
I love that the machine's a girl. That's all I'm going to say.
the machine becomes a girl.
Everyone,
Thanks to Root.
everyone falls into Roots. I just
She
love
is
it.
very, conviction oriented about that. The machine is a she.
And the harken back to the Oregon Trail was nice.
Yes.
Because it's where it all begins.
It's where it all begins, man. Well, with that all said, I would like to thank Spencer and Selene for joining me today to take a look back at Person of Interest, which granted has not been gone for very long, but because it was so criminally underrated and because I really wanted to feel like there were other people in the world who understood my passion, we convened this panel. At this time, I'd like to read our little conclusory statement that I've been reading just to put a nice little pin on it, and because I listen to other podcasts and they give me ideas. CPU was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, and hails from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, which means give us stars. I'm not going to tell you how many, but I think you know what we want. Or comment on YouTube so we can spread the word more effectively. If you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via Facebook and Twitter. Though, of course, we always add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. As always, we have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Make sure you subscribe to the blog, any one of our channels, or social media accounts, and stay up on new events and episodes. You can find old CPU episodes by searching for us via the web or directly at our website. And then, in the meantime, if you do want to watch Person of Interest, as we've mentioned, and though Netflix really should owe us money for as many times as we say their name, Person of Interest is available on Netflix. If you want to revisit, find yourself that little red icon. Until the next time CPU is around the water cooler or looking back at these old shows, keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned. Bye-bye.